Chapter 35. Heaven and Hell are from the human race. In the Christian world, it is wholly unknown that heaven and hell are from the human race, for it is believed that in the beginning angels were created and heaven was thence formed. Also that the devil or Satan was an angel of light, but having rebelled he was cast down with his crew, and thus hell was formed. It is a matter of the greatest wonder to the angels that such is the belief in the Christian world, and still more that nothing is really known about heaven, when in fact that is the primary thing of doctrine in the Church. But since such ignorance reigns, they rejoice in heart that it has pleased the Lord to reveal to those in the Christian world at this time many things about heaven and about hell, thereby dispelling as far as possible the darkness that is increasing from day to day, because the Church has come to its end. They wish, for this reason, that I should declare from their lips that in the entire heaven there is not a single angel who was created such in the beginning, nor in hell any devil who was created an angel of light and cast down, but that all, both in heaven and in hell, are from the human race. In heaven, those who lived in the world in heavenly love and faith. In hell, those who lived in infernal love and faith. Also, that it is heaven taken as a whole that is called the devil and Satan, the name devil being given to the hell that is behind, where those are who are called evil genii, and the name Satan being given to the hell that is in front, where those are who are called evil spirits. The character of these hells will be described in the following pages. The angels said that the Christian world had gathered such a belief about those in heaven and those in hell from passages in the Word not understood in any other way than in accordance with the sense of the letter, and not illustrated and explained by genuine doctrine derived from the Word. Although the sense of the letter of the Word, unless genuine doctrine illuminates it, draws the mind in different directions, and this begets ignorant opinions, heresies, and errors. The man of the Church also derives this belief from his believing that no man comes into heaven or into hell until the time of the Last Judgment. And about that he has accepted the opinion that all visible things will perish at that time and new things will come into existence, and that the soul will then return into its body, and from that union man will again live as a man. This belief involves the other, that angels were created such in the beginning. For it is impossible to believe that heaven and hell are from the human race when it is believed that no man can go there before the end of the world. But that man might be convinced that this is not true, it has been granted me to be in company with angels, and also to talk with those who are in hell, and this now for many years, sometimes continuously from morning until evening, and thus be informed about heaven and hell. This has been permitted so that the man of the Church may no longer continue in his erroneous belief about the resurrection at the time of the judgment, and about the state of the soul in the meanwhile, also about angels and the devil. As this belief is a belief in what is false, it involves the mind in darkness, And with those who think about these things from their own intelligence, it induces doubt, and at length denial. For they say in their heart, how can so vast a heaven, with so many constellations, and with the sun and moon, be destroyed and dissipated? And how can the stars, which are larger than the earth, fall from heaven to the earth? And can bodies eaten up by worms, consumed by corruption, and scattered to all the winds, be gathered together again to their soul? And where, in the meantime, is the soul? And what is it when deprived of the senses it had in the body? Besides many other like things, which, because they are incomprehensible, exceed belief, and destroy the belief of many in the life of the soul after death, and their belief in heaven and hell, and with these other matters pertaining to the faith of the Church. That this belief has been destroyed is evident from its being said, "Who has ever come to us from heaven and told us that there is a heaven? What is hell? Is there any? What is this about man's being tormented with fire to eternity? What is the day of judgment? Has it not been expected in vain for ages, with other things that involve a denial of everything?" Therefore, lest those who think in this way, as many do who from their worldly wisdom are reputed to be erudite and learned, should any longer confound and mislead the simple in faith and heart, and induce infernal darkness respecting God and heaven and eternal life, and all else that depends on these, the interiors of my spirit have been opened by the Lord, and I have thus been permitted to talk after their decease with all with whom I was ever acquainted in the life of the body, with some for days, with some for months, and with some for a year, and also with so many others that I should not exaggerate if I should say 100,000, many of whom were in heaven, and many in hell. I have also talked with some 2 days after their decease, and have told them that their funeral services and obsequies were then being held in preparation for their interment. To which they replied that it was well to cast aside that which had served them as a body and for bodily functions in the world. And they wished me to say that they were not dead, but were living as men the same as before, and had merely migrated from one world into the other, and were not aware of having lost anything, since they were in a body and its sensual things just as before, also in the exercise of understanding and will as before, having thoughts and affections, sensations and desires of the same quality as in the world. Most of those who had recently died, when they saw themselves to be living men as before and in a like state, for after death everyone's state of life is at first such as it was in the world, but there is a gradual change in it either into heaven or into hell, were moved by new joy at being alive, saying that they had not believed that it would be so. But they greatly wondered that they should have lived in such ignorance and blindness about the state of their life after death, and especially that the man of the Church should be in such ignorance and blindness, when, above all others in the whole world, he might be clearly enlightened in regard to these things. Then they began to see the cause of that blindness and ignorance, which is that external things, which are things related to the world and the body, had so occupied and filled their minds that they could not be raised into the light of heaven and consider the things of the church beyond doctrinal matters. For when matters relating to the body and the world are loved, as much as they are at the present day, nothing but darkness flows into the mind when they go further. Very many of the learned from the Christian world are astonished when they see themselves after death in a body, in garments, and in houses as in the world. And when they recall what they had thought about the life after death, the soul, spirits, and heaven and hell, they are ashamed and say that they thought foolishly, and that the simple in faith thought much more wisely than they. Learned men who confirmed themselves in such ideas and ascribed all things to nature were examined, and it was found that their interiors were wholly closed up, and their exteriors were open, so that they did not look to heaven, but to the world, and also, therefore, to hell. For to the extent that man's interiors are open, he looks to heaven. But to the extent that his interiors are closed and his exteriors opened, he looks to hell, because the interiors of man are formed for the reception of all things of heaven, but the exteriors for the reception of all things of the world. And those who receive the world and not heaven at the same time receive hell. That heaven is from the human race can be confirmed also from the fact that angelic minds and human minds are alike, both enjoying the ability to understand, perceive and will, and both having been formed to receive heaven. For the human mind is just as capable of becoming wise as the angelic mind. And if it does not attain to such wisdom in the world, it is because it is in an earthly body. And in that body its spiritual mind thinks naturally. But it is otherwise when the mind is loosed from the bonds of that body. Then it no longer thinks naturally, but spiritually. And when it thinks spiritually, then its thoughts are incomprehensible and ineffable to the natural man. Thus it becomes wise like an angel, all of which confirms that the internal part of man, called his spirit, is in essence an angel, and when loosed from the earthly body is equally in the human form and an angel. That an angel is in a complete human form may be seen above. When, however, the internal man has not been opened above but only beneath, it is still, after it has been loosed from the body in a human form, but a horrible and diabolical form. For it is not able to look upwards towards heaven, but only downwards towards hell. Moreover, anyone who has been taught about divine order can understand that man was created to become an angel, because in him is the ultimate of order, in which what belongs to heavenly and angelic wisdom can be brought into form and can be restored and multiplied. Divine order never stops midway there to form a something apart from an ultimate, for it is not in its fullness and completion there, but it goes on to the ultimate, and when it is in its ultimate, it takes on its form, and by means there collected, it renews itself and produces itself further, which is accomplished through procreations. Therefore, the seed ground of heaven is in the ultimate. The Lord rose again, not as to his spirit alone, but also as to his body, because when he was in the world, he glorified his whole human, that is, he made it divine. For his soul, which he had from the Father, was of itself the very divine, while his body became a likeness of the soul, that is, of the Father, thus also divine. This is why he, differently from any man, rose again as to both. And this he made manifest to the disciples, who when they saw him believed that they saw a spirit, by saying, "See my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. Handle me and see, for a spirit hath not flesh and bones, as ye see me have." Indicating thereby that he was man not only as to the spirit, but also as to the body. That it might be known that man lives after death and comes in accordance with his life in the world, either into heaven or into hell, many things have been disclosed to me about the state of man after death, which will be presented in due order in the following pages, where the world of spirits is treated of.